My name is Rich Gordon, and I had the honor of serving this community as a member of the California State Assembly. And I have the honor tonight of serving as your Master of Ceremonies for what is the first in a planned series of events to help us as a community come together and understand each other in much better ways. Our community has suffered a trauma. We are in pain, we are angry, and we are experiencing fear. We come tonight for healing and to affirm the values of our community. Respect for each other, acceptance of our diversity, the sanctity of life, the belief that light will overcome darkness, and that love is always stronger than hate. On April 23rd of this year, a crime born out of hate and intolerance left 8 people severely injured. A teenager from our community remains hospitalized in severe condition. As we begin tonight, can we take just a moment of silence to send our thoughts and our prayers to those 8 individuals? If you wish, you can also write a note of encouragement to those who were injured, and you can donate to Sunnyvale Community Services, which has set up a fund to support the needs of those who are injured. In so many ways, the injured were not the only victims. We were all victims. Tonight, as we gather for unity, you may feel a need for additional support. And if so, in the back of the room, there are counseling staff from Asian Americans for Community Involvement who are here for those who may need additional support. Also, from our own police department, Chaplain McKee is here in the back of the room. And we thank them for being with us for those who need additional support. All of us who are here tonight are honored guests. But I do want to thank the elected officials and their representatives who are here. And I want to thank the religious leaders and community leaders who are here. And let me begin by acknowledging that we have the honor tonight of having in our presence the Honorable Deputy General Counsel of India, Rohit Rashish. If I introduced all of the elected officials individually, we'd run out of time. So I'm going to do it in groups. So would the members of the Sunnyvale City Council please stand? The members of the Sunnyvale School District Board. We have folks from the Cupertino Union School District. We have Santa Clara County Board of Supervisor Joe Simidian. Representing Congressman Ro Kahana is Tom Pike. And representing Assemblymember Mark Berman is Leslie Bullock. And finally, we've been joined by a council member from Monte Sereno. Should also acknowledge the city staff, city leaders who have helped bring this event to its fruition, but also who certainly served this community well during a great time of need. As we begin tonight, I would remind you that this is a gathering of peace and unity. We will expect nothing less than respect, which creates a place of safety, of tolerance, and love. And we begin tonight with an invocation. And let me ask Samina Usman to come forward for that invocation. Samina?
O God, who we know by many names, you are love itself and dwell in overwhelming light. We, who have been struck by the forces of violence and hate, turn to you for healing, for aid, for peace, and for restoration, and ask you to fill our hearts with your light and your love that never diminishes. We have gathered today in community to testify to our love for all humanity and to our commitment to justice in our communities. So give us the love, patience, and wisdom to confront the forces of injustice with patience, determination, and unwavering commitment to truth. We are here today testifying that we will not return hate for hate. We will not be complicit in the suffering of the marginalized, but neither will we admit into our hearts the least trace of bitterness or revenge. Rather, we follow the example of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, who understood as only light can drive out darkness, so only love can drive out hate. We pledge to be attentive to the voices of our scriptures and our prophets, of the Quran, which states, God guides whoever follows his good pleasure along the pathways to peace, and of the New Testament that tells us, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Of the Talmud, which explains the entire Torah is for the sake of the ways of peace. Of the Hindu Vedas that proclaim, the Supreme Lord is peace. And of the Guru Granth Sahib that states, or that testifies, that, or teaches, justice is not passed on mere words or labels, but actions. And the words of wisdom from many other traditions, we invoke their wisdom, their power, their truth upon our gatherings and upon the world. Divine One, pour your light and your blessings on all those that mobilize, organize, congregate, and gather to overcome violence with peace and hatred with love, so that we may use our power, our privilege to bring healing and mend hearts, to build bridges, and to be unequivocal in our commitment to justice. May you bring peace to a divided and tormented community, to a divided and tormented nation, to a divided and tormented world. Strengthen our resolve and deepen our commitments to love, and to go forth from this commemoration ever determined to live in your light and your love, to serve, to heal, and to change our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Samina. Our community leaders oftentimes don't know what test they will be given when they get elected to office. Mayor Larry Klein did not know what test he would face, but he has done this test with grace and honor for all of us. Please welcome Mayor Larry Klein.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. We are gathered to honor the 8 victims from the incident of April 23rd. And we were all shaken and saddened by that event. And our hearts go out to the families of those victims who are simply walking and biking to their destinations, going shopping, going to the library, going to their homes. Please continue to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. This incident occurred a mere block away from my home. I was at the scene until past midnight, talking to residents, talking to public safety. And I often return to see the flowers, the get well cards, the well wishes that people have made for those victims. Like so many, when I heard the news, I at first attributed to an accident, a health issue while driving, a drunk driver. It never occurred to me that it might be intentional. We later learned from the investigation that evidence showed that this act was not only intentional, but it was intended to target the members of the Muslim faith. I was saddened and shocked to see racism and bigotry exist in our city. Hatred, violence, and extremism in all its forms is not welcome in Sunnyvale. We were heartbroken to learn that this type of violent bigotry could actually happen here. This hatred and bigotry is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. We do acknowledge that hate and fear exist in Sunnyvale, but let us gather tonight instead in love and in peace and in light. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Tonight, we gather in light and in love. Sunnyvale takes great pride in its diversity and people who form the fabric of our fair city. And we are better because of that diversity. We stand in solidarity with the Muslim and the Hindu community, and we embrace our community of many backgrounds and many beliefs. In February of 2017, former Mayor Glenn Hendricks and the entire Sunnyvale City Council acknowledged the importance of the diversity of Sunnyvale. And we made a statement of those city values, which you'll find at the rear of the room. Part of that statement states that in Sunnyvale, 1, we value our individual experiences and support and protect people of any race, religion, ancestry, ethnicity, ability, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity. 2, we honor cultural and religious traditions. And 3, we value and embrace the diverse backgrounds, race, nationalities, ancestries, and ethnicities of our residents. This diversity and inclusiveness are strengths in our community. We don't tolerate hate against Muslims. We don't tolerate hates against Jews, against Christians, against Hindus, or against atheists. We don't tolerate hate against any faith, any belief, any people, any background, anyone. Sunnyvale is a melting pot of people. And on that April evening, there was a diverse range of backgrounds and ages represented on that corner. Indian, Latino, Asian, and Caucasian. Sunnyvale has always been welcoming. No matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter how old or how young you are, no matter who you love, you are welcome in our city. Sunnyvale is no home for hate. We are gathering tonight with the desire to bring the community together for positive change. The panel that you will soon hear represents many face and background in our community. They are the leaders who help shed light and love throughout everything that they do. Please listen closely to the wisdom of their answers and consider their meaningful words as of these pillars of light in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Klein. We are going to move to a panel. We're going to take just a second, though, because we are going to get mics for the panel. We have also been joined tonight by Javier Bajita, a commissioner in Santa Clara, and I know that there are other commissioners and representatives here. The panel tonight has been brought together with the great assistance of Maha Elangadi, who is the executive director of the Islamic Networks Group. And we appreciate Maha's involvement in bringing this panel to us. The panel will be moderated by someone who has served our communities with great distinction for many years, someone who I consider a great friend, and that's County Supervisor Joe Simidian. So if you join me in welcoming Supervisor Simidian and the panel, we'll get them seated, get them mic'd, and we'll get the panel underway.
Good evening. I'm County Supervisor Joe Simidian. And it is my good fortune to have a microphone that works. Forgive me, I just thought a little levity on what could be a sad, and should be, a somber evening of reflection. I think, as I've listened to the speakers thus far, and as we are about to hear from the panelists, many of us are here with mixed emotions. In the aftermath of an event that is really almost beyond description, there is an understandable tendency, perhaps even an appropriate tendency, to want to stand up and speak out and push back. That being said, this is also an occasion for each one of us to reach out, offer an embrace, and provide comfort and solace to our friends and our neighbors. It is worth taking a moment before we introduce the panel to remind ourselves that, as was referenced earlier, this is a county of extraordinary diversity. In my own view, we are lucky to live in such a place. I think many of you know that Santa Clara County is what's known as a majority-minority jurisdiction, a place where no one particular ethnic group forms the majority of the county. And in fact, something like 45% of our county residents are foreign-born, which means that something like 65 to 70% of our residents live in a household where at least one member of the family is foreign-born. As I say, my own view is that that diversity is an extraordinary asset if well used, because each one of us can learn from one another, which means that if we take that opportunity to make sure we have no hate in our heart, but only a desire for understanding, that we can truly ensure that the whole becomes more than just the sum of the parts. I want you to take a minute, just a moment, to look to your left, look to your right, look in front of you, and look behind you, and take physical recognition of the diversity that is Sunnyvale. This is a place where roughly half of the residents speak a language other than English at home. So, the challenge tonight, and the challenge that we're going to ask for some help from our panelists with, is whether or not we can make that diversity a strength and a source of solace going forward, rather than allow it to in some way divide us. Now, our goal for this panel is to learn from a very diverse group, understanding and incorporating their different perspectives on how we can together address the hate that too frequently targets some element of our community. Panelists, everyone here wants to learn about how to find unity and strengthen our diversity, so I want you to feel frank as we learn from you. This is the time for candid conversation and deep reflection. So let's begin with the hopefully easiest of the questions tonight. Could you tell us who you are by name, occupation, and at least one of the communities you represent? Why don't we start at this end of the panel?
Good evening, I'm Richard Conda, an attorney and the executive director of the Asian Law Alliance. We're located in San Jose. We're a legal services organization.
I'm the Reverend George Ann McDonald from St. Mark's Episcopal Church.
Good afternoon, my name is Marisela Gutierrez. I'm the executive director of SIREN, which stands for Services, Immigrant Rights, and Education Network. We're based here in Santa Clara County and also the Central Valley. I grew up in the Central Valley. My community is immigrants, Latino immigrants, indigenous people.
I'm Rabbi Amy Eilberg. I belong to a synagogue in Los Altos, and I work at Faith in Action Bay Area, which is a multiracial, multi-religious justice organization for just a little bit to the north, serving San Francisco and San Mateo counties.
I'm Maha El-Junaidi. I'm the executive director of the Islamic Networks Group, which helped organize this panel. We're an educational outreach organization that is based in San Jose with affiliates around the country, and I represent Muslim Americans, and I'm also ethnically an Arab American.
My name is Jianhu Shifu. I'm the abbot or head monk of the Zhongtai Zen Center of Sunnyvale. We're from the Chinese Zen Buddhism tradition. We teach meditation and Buddhist philosophy.
Good evening and namaste everyone. My name is Samir Kalra. I'm an attorney and the managing director for the Hindu American Foundation, a national advocacy group for the Hindu American community. And most importantly, I'm a Sunnyvale resident.
Okay. Good evening everyone. My name is Nirvair Singh. I am here on behalf of the Sikh Coalition, a civil rights organization and an advocacy organization for the Sikh community that was formed right after 9/11, when Sikhs were targeted as part of the backlash that happened right after 9/11. I have lived in, not in Sunnyvale, but around Sunnyvale for nearly 30 years. My wife and I, we have raised 2 children in this area. Both are done with college. And when I look at their friends, right, it really makes me proud because their friends represent us, right? All shades, all colors, all different ethnic backgrounds. Professionally, I am a software engineer. I also teach at Fertile College, part-time computer science teacher there. And Sunnyvale is my favorite place for my training runs. I'm a long distance runner, and on a Saturday you can find me alongside Steeles Creek Trail or along the waterfront. Thank you.
The question is, could each of you describe what your community, as you self-described or self-identified, what is your community experiencing in terms of hate in the wider community?
Thank you for repeating that. So, as I mentioned, Sikhs, because of the turbans and facial hair, they've been mistaken for being something other than who they are. And off and on, they've been targeted due to hatred, sometimes violence. Sikh places of worship have been attacked in the US in different states. And this incident that happened not too far from here in April, it really brought back memories of some of the things that I personally saw and read about and faced right after 9/11. And I just hope that we learn from these experiences, band together, and continue to follow.
I'm on very strict instructions from Maha to keep it under a minute, so I'm going to go very quickly here. Again, I'm representing the Hindu American community. Minute and a half. Okay, so I got a little extra time. Representing the Hindu American community, and we've been noticing a number of trends in the last several years where we've seen a spike in anti-Hindu hate violence that has ranged from temple desecrations and vandalisms to physical violence. If we look at FBI statistics, the most recent FBI statistics, they show that the number of Hindu victims of hate crime incidents have actually tripled since 2015. Beyond actual hate incidents or hate crimes, we've seen an increase in hate speech, particularly on social media, where there's been a proliferation of that, and in the public sphere. We've experienced bullying in the K-12 schools. And these are all as a result or fueled by a combination of factors, ranging from religious intolerance, religious exclusivism, in some cases, a lack of religious literacy. And on that point, only 22% of Americans actually know a practicing Hindu across the country. And most Americans, according to Pew, have a neutral or negative view towards Hindus. So for us, one of the main things is to increase education and awareness about our community, and to engage with others across the board that we're doing here. And I have 7 seconds left, so one last point I'm going to get in, is that we have witnessed incidents that have been both based on anti-Muslim, anti-Arab bias, as well as anti-Hindu and anti-Indian bias.
I want to start with, we have been pretty lucky as Buddhists mostly, but I want to relate two incidents. One is that several years ago, we tried to set up a Zen center in a small city in Los Angeles area. We worked with the city many years, satisfying all the demands they require. Finally, the city planner recommended our project for approval, but then to our surprise, a local church had a smear campaign on us, and the city council had a very ridiculous bias for us, so we didn't get approval. 2 years later, the U.S. Department of Justice actually found the city guilty of religious discrimination. Another incident was here locally, and one day a pastor came to my monastery saying, "Want to interview me to do a presentation on Buddhism for the congregation." I was pleasantly surprised. And then I interviewed with him for an hour. I never heard from him, and when I called him a few months later, he said all the videos that he has distributed, although he said he was gonna send it to me for approval. So there are certain groups who actually will demonize your religion, our religion. Probably not too many, but that does happen in certain congregations.
Thank you. So for Muslims, as you might imagine, in 2017, the California Department of Justice reported a 24% increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes. And that statistic represents only a fraction of the problem, because there's a huge ratio between reported and unreported, and that ratio ranges between 1 to 3 to 1 to 10, depending on the community. A better indicator of the status of Muslims in terms of hate crimes is by asking them, and based on studies where Muslims have been asked, 3 of 5 have experienced discrimination in some form, which is alarming. And then when you include, and when you add all of the hate crimes that are happening against Sikhs, against Hindus, and against other groups of people because they're thought to be Muslim, you can understand that this is sort of a crisis, and that is taking place in the country towards Muslims and anyone who's perceived to be Muslim. So hate crimes, discrimination, and bullying are huge problems for Muslims. And the underlying causes we find is extremely negative stereotypes. For example, when Americans were asked about their views on whether they would select a political candidate based on their position on the Muslim ban, 55% of Americans didn't care. They simply didn't care. And when there are other stats that are similar to this that are actually in California that are also quite alarming. So when the hate crime happens in Sunnyvale, it's sad, but I'm not too surprised either. When Americans were asked to rate the views of Islam compared to other religions and atheism, Islam came out of having the worst views. And this has been a consistent pattern. So unless we change perceptions about Muslims and Islam, we're very likely to continue to experience an increase in hate crimes as we saw in Sunnyvale last month.
Rabbi.
I need my timer, otherwise I'll get in trouble. Okay. So during the same period, the last 5 years in general, and the last 2 years in particular, there's been a tremendous resurgence of anti-Semitism measured in what might be called sort of nuisance actions, hateful phone messages into synagogues and Jewish day schools, swastikas drawn on synagogues, which is far more than nuisance, and a tremendous increase in violence, violent attacks on Jews. I need to say that Jews have a 2,000-year-long history, particularly in Christian Europe, of being accustomed to being hated and being attacked. So just in America, in the past 40 or 50 years, we began to really feel safe. But then in the last couple of years in particular, we have this resurgence in violence, and on April 27th, just a couple of days after the terrible attack in Sunnyvale, was the second lethal attack on a synagogue in the United States in a 6-month period, and the first in Pittsburgh, 11 people were killed, the second in San Diego, period, 1 person was killed. What's my community experiencing? My community's experienced tremendous fear. Talk all the time about how do we secure the synagogue because we don't feel safe in our own house of worship.
Marisa.
We're in a moment. As you all know, I don't have to tell you what is going on with immigrants and refugees, especially Central American, Mexican, Latino immigrants that are trying to cross the border seeking asylum and refuge. We're in one of probably the worst times in history as far as how we treat immigrants and refugees in this country. And for me, it's been very difficult to run an immigrant and refugee rights organization, just experiencing the demand in our services. We've seen our services triple in the demand of people seeking legal services, support, advocacy, resources, and it's a very challenging time.
Our microphones are live now.
But we've been here before. I don't know how many of you remember Proposition 187 in California. We're supposed to be the most progressive state. It was a moment where a lot of people organized, young people especially, took to the streets, mobilized, did a lot of community organizing. Some of the folks that did a lot of this organizing became elected officials. And so we know that moments like this calls for all of us to step up. And that is what I've been seeing in the community, is that more than beyond the hate, love is trampling hate, that there's more people standing up to make change, to stand up and speak for immigrants and refugees, to build solidarity, to find ways how they can organize in their communities. And so that's my time.
George.
So I represent a different point of view, which is the majority point of view. I'm a Christian from a church, and overall we don't experience the same kind of hate that my other cousins up here represent. We have, that's not to say there isn't some targeting that goes on within Christianity, and there are exceptions. Christian minorities, for example, the Black church has long been part of a target of hate by white Christian extremists and racist groups. Mainline Protestant churches are sometimes judged as being not true Christians from other Christians. LGBTQ Christians and affirming churches that accept the queer community can be also targeted by hate. A cathedral known for having an openly gay priest, their church was tagged with some pretty awful words, fag church, after his election. an openly gay minister who saw tons of hate mail ended up wearing a bulletproof vest to a public speaking event. So while there is less hatred going on and we're not living in the same kind of fear within our community, there is this sense of minority groups being targeted.
Richard? I think if you just pull those a little closer to you all, they'll be within reach.
So as the last speaker here on the panel, I kind of like to just reaffirm what everybody else has said, that clearly the Sikhs and the South Asians and a lot of the Muslims that are being targeted, we all feel that in the Asian American community, as well as the immigrant community that are feeling fearful and just really insecure these days, given messaging coming from Washington, D.C. So that kind of fear it's really troubling because we see families come in just really afraid to go to school, to go to the doctor, to go to the hospital, to seek any kind of assistance. And that's really not the kind of society we want. I mean, if somebody is the victim of domestic violence, we want them to be able to, without fear, call for help, not to be afraid to call for help. So I think in this county, we're fortunate that we have a lot of enlightened political leaders, and we're hoping that we can continue that direction.
Thank you. Let me just ask, having heard from all of you, where does that bigotry come from? What is the source of it? Let me go to Maha and then back to Richard and then to George. Just in the interest of time, I want to just have a handful of responders to this particular question. But where does this bigotry come from? You've all described experiences that you or folks in your community have experienced. What's the source of it?
I'm so glad you asked that question. It's an important question to be asked, and something that I'm going to devote quite a bit of my time to, not right now, but sort of in terms of what my organization will be doing. It has an incredibly long history, and we're not going to be able to overcome the bigotry that these communities are confronting without us addressing the roots of this bigotry. So we need to revisit it to understand what happened, how false narratives came about different people. And then how to go about rebuilding or reconstructing our understanding of people. I'm going to take you back in time or sort of give you a little bit of a history lesson. It begins with the European colonization in the period between 1500 and the 1940s, right around World War II. So it stretches over 4 centuries. And during this period of time, particularly in the latter periods between 1800 and 1900, massive efforts took place to control the colonies, which required the colonizers, mostly the British, the Dutch, the Belgians, and others, to create and to reinforce knowledge about the people that they were colonizing. So this period of time is where we locate the roots of negative images that we still live with today about different people. Images about Muslims and Arabs as extremists and misogynistic. Blacks as brutes, as not too intelligent, as lazy. Native Americans as savages. Indian men as effeminate, and so forth. That period is also marked by what we now call the process of racialization, which is the process by which different ethnic, cultural, and religious groups were categorized into different buckets and assigned to each of those buckets or group certain positive or negative attributes and characteristics. So which group do you think always came out on top in that categorization? You might guess it's white Christian groups were always on top. Brown, Abrahamic, and Hindu and Buddhist people were in the middle, and black people always came out on the bottom. And the attributes of each group is what you might imagine it to be. White people were considered to be the civilized, godly group who had a manifest destiny to rule the world and to civilize the rest of us. Brown people were suitable for working for white people, and black people were the laborers. These categories and attributes continue to be reinforced today through education, what we choose to teach, and what we don't teach, how we portray people in the media, and the kinds of policies we have towards different groups of people, both domestic and foreign policies. And I want you to pause and think about this, because this is the problem. We're still living with these narratives, and they keep recycling. We're never going to escape it without addressing the root causes. I'm going to turn it over to Richard to talk a little bit about policies.
So I think if we kind of reflect back on the last presidential campaigns where there was really extreme rhetoric used by certain sectors, and unfortunately that rhetoric continued once the election was ended and the president was elected. And so that kind of messaging has kind of infused this community throughout the nation and through this community as well. And I think that kind of rhetoric really enables people to act out maybe what they've only been thinking, but maybe because they feel enabled, now they act out that kind of hate. We really need to try to stop that kind of rhetoric and try to become a more civilized kind of conversation where two sides maybe can agree to disagree, but can try to bring the debate to a level where it's more civil, and instead of using such hateful things like, you know, building a wall, in terms of trying to exclude people based on notions of crime entering this country, drugs entering this country, demonizing immigrants. So I think that has been a problem that we need to address. And clearly, you know, California, we would hope is more enlightened in this, but there are sectors in this community where that kind of hate is alive and well, unfortunately.
George, closing thought?
The worldview of white European dominance and supremacy is being transformed, I think, because that's where it comes from. It comes from, unfortunately, my people, and I know that. I own it. I see it. I hope that if you're in the audience and you look like me, that you know that, you own it, you see it, and that you work really hard to start untangling the supremacist paradigm that we have lived with for centuries now. Because it's time for that paradigm to be transformed and be replaced by a pluralistic, multi-faith global culture. And that is scary stuff for people. It's scary for people that are in control. It's scary for Christians, even good ones who are faithful people and peace-loving people. So often I hear some of my elders of my community lament the culture that we're losing. And I like to remind them that Christianity was alive and well long before the supremacist paradigm. It will be alive and well long after that. The paradigm is shifting and losing power, but that is not the core Christian message. It's important to remember that. Church's work is to untangle and examine our identity and repent from a supremacist posture. Maha brought up manifest destiny, that idea that allowed us to take over the rest of this country, to take North America by storm as European explorers. That doctrine, not too long ago, was reflected on, at least in my tradition, very carefully, and by my denomination, and it was said it was wrong and that we repent of the damage that has done, and that did not represent the best that Christianity had to offer.
All right. Let's come back to this end of the table, if we could, please, and we'll hope that microphones continue to work and can be shared. What would each one of you like people to know about you and your community? As you know, you're here in an impossible role as representatives of the thousands, tens of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of folks. But what would you like everyone in this community to know or understand about the community you're here to represent tonight?
Just talk to each other. It's as simple as that. Okay. Once we start talking to each other, we find out that we have a lot more in common than we think. Okay? And whether it's a Sikh or a Hindu or a Muslim or a person practicing Buddhism or somebody from the Jewish faith, just talk to them. It's very simple.
Samir, what would you like people to know about the Hindu community?
So first of all, I do want to say that while I am here representing the community, I'm by far not the only community member that's working tirelessly on behalf of the Hindu community. And really quickly, I just want to recognize a couple of community leaders here from the Hindu American community. Kandirao Khan, right here, and Milan Makwana in the back have actually been instrumental in their organization, HSS, in visiting the family that was just traumatized in this recent incident in the hospital, providing food for them and other support. So really want to thank them for their efforts within the community and for the broader work they do. Also, Krishna Kumar Pandey from the Durga Temple right here in Sunnyvale is also here, and that actually leads me to my next point. I think, as Nirvair said, it's important to build these bridges and talk to and engage your neighbors and visit temples. Come, we have open doors. Come visit us. Come learn more about us. Reach out to us. We at the Hindu American Foundation have a number of resources that we can provide about Hinduism to dispel stereotypes, to talk about the community, to talk about what we're trying to do here in Sunnyvale, but also nationwide. So engage in us proactively and start a conversation.
Panelists, you're getting a little bit ahead of me, and that's okay, because I do want to ask in just a moment, what can all of us here do to help make members of your particular community feel respected and included? But I want to press a little bit right now. Both of you have said that you hope we'll have these conversations. These conversations, of course, are designed to help us understand a little bit more about one another. So, Samir, going back to you for a minute, if I can put you on the spot a little bit. What do you want 300 people in the room to know about the Hindu community? Help us understand your community. What is it that comes to mind as a thing that it would be important to share and for each one of us to understand about your faith community?
Sure. So I'll try to summarize 5,000 years of history in about 15 seconds. But on a serious note, I think the number one thing to understand about our community is we are pluralistic. We believe, and our core scriptures believe, that the truth is one. The wise call it by many names. There are many paths to the divine, and it's not just about tolerating others, but it's learning to respect each other's traditions. The second thing I would want people to know about the Hindu American community is that we see divinity in everything and everywhere, whether that's the environment, whether that's in people regardless of their background, race, gender, religion, etc. And so this permeating divinity everywhere, and that I think is at the core of Hinduism. Of course, there are many other parts to it, but dig a little deeper. Don't believe just the stereotypes that we have, millions of gods. Those are manifestations of the underlying divinity that we see everywhere in the world and facets of that divinity. Talk to people and trying to find out more about Hinduism when you hear that we're polytheistic or idol worshipers, or that all we believe in is a caste system. There is a lot more to Hinduism than that. We are a peaceful, pluralistic group that believes in the divinity in all beings, and we respect all other people's choice and their own paths and how they choose to follow their own path.
Let me turn now to the representative of the Buddhist community.
When was the last time you feel really at peace with yourself? Did you know that you can train yourself to do that? So it does take training. It's been thousands of years of knowledge and experience passed down. So Buddhists teach meditation, mindfulness, how to reach out into that profound silence within, which can bring profound insight. And I think a lot of people are very stressed in this modern age, but just learning how to quiet down and be calm, I think can solve a lot of problems. And I'm hoping that more and more people find the benefits of that. And Buddha says everyone can become fully enlightened as the Buddha. So we fully believe that each person has that great potential to be the very best.
Maha, what would you like people to know about the 1.8 billion Muslims on the planet?
How many billion? 2 billion.
1.8?
1.8. Okay, very good. Wow. All right.
Pop quiz for the moderator, apparently. There you go.
So 3 things. I want you to know 3 things about Muslims. I could really identify with some of the earlier things that Samir said about how Islam is very much misrepresented in public schools, and that's sort of the work that I do. And you can trace all of that back to the way that the colonialists defined these different religions, a long history of it. But 3 things that I want you to know about Muslims. One is that they're not monolithic. They're quite diverse, as has been pointed out by other speakers. People may not know this, but there are about 190 nations in the world, and about 55 of them are Muslim majority. 55. And that's where we get the diversity. And then we have sizable minority populations in another 50 countries. America is one of them. We are a small minority here, maybe 1% to 2%, but we're one of the largest religious minorities next to the Jewish community. And with these different national origins, Muslims then are now indigenous to these countries, and with that we get different languages, different cultures, differences in everything, with the exception of the fundamentals of the faith. The second thing that I want you to know is that we're Abrahamic people. We are closely aligned with Christianity and Judaism. The fact that I'm dressed the way that I am is not unique to Islam. This is not foreign. It should not be considered to be foreign to American Christians and Jews. This is very much rooted in the earlier traditions, the idea of modest dress, conservative dress. I happen to be, really traditional. We believe in the God of Abraham, and this is why you find so many very similar beliefs and practices in the Abrahamic traditions. But we also share a lot with the other traditions, particularly with Hinduism and Buddhism. The Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path are all teachings and of Islam as well. We have shared values with Hindus and Buddhists. And so it would really be great to learn more about religions and to increase religious literacy, because you'll find that we have much more in common than we have differences.
Rabbi?
2 things in my 1 minute that I'd like for you to know or reflect on. One is that Jews in America are more vulnerable than we look. Now, if you think that all Jews are smart, all Jews are white, all Jews are rich, Hollywood is dominated by Jews, and American politics and so on, obviously those are, in some cases, supposed to be flattering, but really recycled, age-old anti-Semitic stereotypes. We're actually not all smart. We're certainly we're not the wealthiest minority in America, but we have done well in America. It's the one place in our history that we really, as a community, have prospered. But one famous Jewish thinker says, "But beneath our street clothes, we wear shrouds." And that was even before the attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. We're very much afraid, and we have more and more reason. While there was a dip in that, we now have more reason again. And the other thing I want for you to know about us is that as a people, we have a strong philosophy of never again. And although there are some Jews for whom never again means a Holocaust should never again happen to Jews, there's a tremendous percentage of the Jewish community for whom never again means never again. We wish, and we have to work to make it so. Genocide should never again happen to anyone else. Murder, racially based, religiously based murder should never again happen to everyone. And I'm proud to say the Jewish leaders and Jewish lay people are consistently on the forefront of efforts to stand in solidarity with other people who have been targeted, as we have often been.
Marisa?
Well, one thing to know is that not all Latinos are immigrants. I know that that's a misunderstanding. Latinos have been here for many, many generations, even before California was part of the U.S. So we go back centuries. But there's a strong roots to our immigrant roots. We're very proud of that. Latinos are also very young. We're a very young population, young, educated, woke, and voting. There are a large population of voters. They may come from immigrant families, but the children are not immigrants, and they're going to have an opportunity to vote in these next elections. And they've been on Twitter, on social media, really learning about a different world that they'd like to see. And so I predict in 2020 that we'll see a big difference. That we had the largest turnout of Latino voters this past election, and we'll continue to see that rise. And then we're also fighting against systemic oppression. So we're fighting against a racist criminal justice and immigration system. And so we see that there's a large percentage of Latino and Black youth that are being funneled into jails, there's a school-to-prison pipeline that's very real. When you look in California, you see that there's a high number of Latino young people in jails. So that's the dynamic that we fight every day.
George.
The community that the church I serve is and lead is repenting from Christian supremacy and instead is working on being a community of Christian diplomats, as I like to call it, of seeing other faith traditions as cousins of one human family. And that can't mean that we see all religions as being the same. Rather, it means to reimagine these conversations of interfaith conversations with our neighbor as being similar to learning a foreign language. The stronger we become in learning a language, the stronger our command of our own native tongue becomes. And I like to think of interfaith work like that, and I invite my community to think in those terms, and that we need to encourage dialogues like these, as well as relationships with our neighbors of different faith traditions, to make it part and parcel of being a church member, that you know what it is to have Muslim cousins, that you know when Ramadan is, that you're saying within your community, be sure to wish people joyful Rosh Hashanah or solemn Rosh Hashanah, or however one would rich one, Rosh Hashanah, Happy New Year. Exactly. See, even I need to learn. So that's the important work that communities and Christian communities need to do.
Richard?
So the Asian American community, as all of you know, is very diverse in terms of age, ethnicity, generations. There's large groups of immigrants who are more recently arrived. So it's a very diverse community with a lot of different languages. I think common values are the value of education, the hardworking kind of nature of the community. But I think for all of us, you know, we want to stand together with anybody else who's the victim of hate or hate violence.
If you hear the phrase, Richard, the Asian community, does that make you feel visible and seen, or does it make you feel overgeneralized and all lumped together?
I think a little of both. I think we are kind of lumped together. And in fact, there's even the kind of the idea of lumping Pacific Islanders with Asian Americans. And so that's something that has been done over the years. It's done for a lot of different reasons. I think we see it as a strength in many ways where we can come together as an Asian American community and work on issues together.
All right. I'm getting the sign from the timekeeper, so I'm going to ask you to really just give one crisp, short response to this question. You have 300 people who care enough to be here tonight. So what can each and every one of us do to help make sure that members of your community feel respected and included? And please try and be tangible. So have the conversations was one thing. Rabbi, Marisa, others?
In the year 2004, we were just starting out in Sunnyvale. We want to set up a permanent Zen center. And I think that the city didn't know a whole lot about us or what we do. And Mayor Larry Klein was on the planning commission. He actually came to our Zen center, sat down with us and meditated, listened to me explaining what Buddhism is about. And I think that is how we want to be respected. It's okay if you don't know us, but keep an open mind and learn from each other, like we have said already. That is the greatest thing.
Thank you. Rabbi, I see you leaning in.
Yes, I want to underline the theme of conversation. But much as I love, this is gorgeous tonight. Absolutely, I hope everyone turned around and looked. It's gorgeous and standing room only. And what we need is to be in conversation with one another. We need to remove the wall. We need to remove the barrier. We need to be meeting across racial lines, across religious lines, across class lines, in living rooms and in dining room tables, and asking the questions, checking out the things that we thought we knew were obvious, that we were what we were raised to believe. And we need to to work together. When one of your neighbors, when may it not happen again, but when it happens again, when a synagogue is attacked or Jewish institutions attacked, leave your hesitancy aside and reach out and email every Jew that you know. Don't worry about feeling foolish. Just write and say, I'm thinking of you. And I do my best to do the same when, God forbid, Muslims are attacked, immigrants are attacked, black people are attacked, and so on. It's a time to reach out and to work together.
Other tangible exhortations? George?
I think it's time for white Christians to ask the awkward question, how can I be a better ally? And to read really important books out there on race or articles, but the most important question, ask your neighbor, ask that awkward question, become friends and ask, how can I be a better ally? And listen to the answer.
Any other comments?
Sure. I'll just make...
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
One just last additional comment. About visiting the community, I would say that Hindus probably have a festival every other day. So definitely come and enjoy. We have many lively festivals here, not just in the city of Sunnyvale, but throughout the Bay Area. Come learn more about us, enjoy some great food, come visit the temples, reach out to us, invite us to your events. I think amongst all of us here, we're all doing a lot of great work. I think there's an onus on us as well to have more dialogue, more events, and not just over specific issues, but just over building bridges. We definitely don't agree on everything up here on this panel, but that's what makes us so unique, and that's what makes this city and this area so unique. And so we have an onus on us as well to do more joint programs, whether they're dialogue series, whether they're trainings with employers, with city officials, with law enforcement, with others in the schools. So I think there's a lot that could be done in terms of just all of you, just get to know your neighbors more, have an open mind and come learn, and don't be afraid to ask. Even if you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask.
I just wanted to add to everything that's been said, and I totally agree with it, is just it's okay to be uncomfortable with getting to know your neighbors. It's not enough that you actually engage. You actually have to learn something about these different religions and different groups of people. Studies have actually shown this, that it's not enough that you engage, because you might think, Mahal Ghanidi is unique. She's an exception to the rule, but that religion that she follows, it's really oppressive or very misogynistic and so forth. You actually have to sort of have a deeper relationship and deeper conversation with these different religious groups. So I would encourage that very much in all of these religious tradition. To get to sort of know the religions and to engage in the process as well. So.
All right. Before I offer just one closing thought, I would like to ask all of you to please give a round of applause and appreciation to our panelists. Thank you. Could we also ask for a round of applause for the audiovisual team that labored long and hard and worked through the problems. And in closing, I just want to offer my own exhortation. It is the nature of elected officials to offer quotes from dead presidents. And the quote I want to offer comes from Abraham Lincoln, who reminded us that to sin by silence makes cowards of men. Let us all speak up when called upon to do so. Back to you, Rich Gordon. Thank you all very much for including me.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to the panel. Asked me to reflect a little bit on what we just heard, and a couple of thoughts have come to mind. First, couldn't agree more that we need to communicate more with each other. Tonight is hopefully the first of a series of events. Tonight we've done a lot of listening as an audience. In the future, perhaps we'll have an opportunity to have more communication with each other. And in that vein, Richard, I want to comment on something you said, that we need to change the nature of our debate. Let me suggest that we need to stop debating. And what we need to do is to move to dialogue. In debate, we listen to find the flaw in what somebody else is saying so that we can respond. In dialogue, we have to listen to understand. And so our communication needs to change. It needs to be different. And the audience, the panel tonight gave us a great opportunity to begin to see the thoughts, the beliefs, the personhood of folks who may be different than we are. And I, as I was sitting here, thought of one of my favorite movies, To Kill a Mockingbird. You remember the great book by Harper Lee? And there's a scene in that movie where Atticus Finch, the lawyer, is sitting on his porch swing with his daughter. And he says this to her. He said, "You can never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. You can never really understand a person until you climb inside his skin and walk around in it." We need to understand each other much better. And it's not an easy task. And finally, I would say this. It's always intriguing to me, as I learned more about our Native Americans in the Southwest, and in the villages and tribes, there were assigned roles for people in the tribe. And we know many of these roles. There was the hunter. That person was responsible to go to get the food for the village. There was the warrior, who was assigned to protect the village and the community. There was the medicine person, who was responsible for the spiritual aspect of the community. But there was a role in most of these villages that we've never heard of. And it was the person who was assigned to be the weaver. The weaver was responsible for the fabric of the community, to make sure that everyone came together in a mosaic pattern. And so I believe that all of us tonight can take a pledge to become the weavers in this community by listening, communicating, and understanding with a sense of love. Let me invite back for some closing comments our mayor, Larry Klein.
Thank you very much to the panel, and I hope that everyone here took some insightful comments and ideas and thoughts away from that conversation. The tragedy of April 23rd was a shock to the Sunnyvale community. However, we should not be afraid. Sunnyvale is not a place of fear. It's a place of love, and we need to think deeply about our response. When I met with the family of one of the victims and told them of the Indian parents afraid to let their children out in their neighborhoods, the parents of the victims were taken aback. They didn't believe that the hatred of one man should make us afraid to live our lives in this lovely city. So let us gather in love and in peace. And as we heal, and as we build solidarity, may the incidents of April 23rd serve as a reminder going forward. I call on each of you to commit to remember what happened, but also look forward to what we want our city to be. Sunnyvale is a place that is diverse. It is inclusive, it is compassionate, it is welcoming. These are the values that represent the best of all of us. May it serve as a reminder that even in the most colorful and vibrant societies, there remains forces of darkness. May it serve as a reminder that acts of senseless violence, even in their ugliest forms, must often come from ignorance. May it serve as a reminder that the only thing that can drive out the darkness is light, and the only thing that can drive out hate is love. When a new person moves into our neighborhood, we welcome them. Last month, a new family moved onto my block, and I took homemade bread to them and found out that they were an immigrant family that had just gotten their citizenship 2 months ago. And they loved their life here in Sunnyvale and chose our city for a reason. People greet them with smiles, and they're happy to be here. I call on you to meet and learn about your neighbors. Smile and talk to strangers. Make new friends. Make a commitment to spread love and spread light. Please take a moment tonight to write on a Post-it on what you're committing to do to make Sunnyvale a better place to live. And add that Post-it to the wall at the back of the room. You can invite compassion and understanding into our community by committing to connect with neighbors, learn about a new culture, visit a temple or a synagogue or a church that you haven't been to before, or merely commit to respect and be kind to others. Your actions can make Sunnyvale a better place to live. Your actions can spread throughout our community and beyond its borders. Join me as we unite tonight against the darkness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Klein. We want to thank those who helped bring this event to its fruition. And so if I could please ask the members of the organizing committee to stand and be recognized, and let us say thank you with a round of applause. We've asked two of our faith leaders to come forward for some closing reflections. So from the Buddhist and the Hindu communities, would the faith leaders please come forward?
On behalf of Hindu community of the Sunnyvale, I'd like to pay thanks to Mayor of Sunnyvale and City Council. All we are here definitely to understand what is our responsibility to take care of our community. As per our Hindu religion, we believe that God, we are children of God. And parents are always caring to all the children. No matter the children are having different thoughts. No matter the children are loving to each other. But parents are caring very nicely to all the children. In the same way, not only in Sunnyvale, we believe that everywhere in America, different religion-wise people are here. And we believe that America is the best country in the world to live. And here, we have to pay good respect to each other, brotherly and sisterly. In that way only we can say our community is really very beautiful, just like a garden. One flower cannot make a garden. Different flowers and with the different smells are making the very beautiful garden. We believe that different religion-wise, different people, all we are here by making a very beautiful garden of the Sunnyvale here. Definitely 23rd April was very shocking day for all of us. Everybody is having big pain for that. Being a Hindu religious leader, we have organized very big prayer over there, and not only at the temple, we communicated to our religious leader in India for doing the special prayer for the good health and speedy recovery of all the injured people. It's our responsibility. Religious leaders are having great responsibility as per my belief. People are having emotional thoughts, and religious leaders, by guiding properly, nicely, definitely make a very strong community. And we believe that Sunnyvale community is very strong community. As Mayor mentioned that the Sunnyvale is not for the fairness. Sunnyvale community is just for the love to each other. And all we are here, and we believe that everybody is committed for that. And we pray to God for the speedy recovery of all the injured persons. Thank you so much, Mayor, for organizing these events. Thank you so much.
I think you already said everything. It's really difficult to drive out hate with love, because that means you not only love the people you love, but you also have to love the people that hate you. And Buddha teaches us how to do that, and that is to think that person, he wasn't born a racist, a criminal. So what went wrong? We need to go back to the source. The source is family. The source is education. The source is what our leaders set as an example. So Sunnyvale, to us, we've been here for 15 years, is setting an example of opening arms to somebody, to an organization who's very different. So I just want everyone to think about that, because it begins with every family, with every person.
Zishan Mukarim will now come forward and will make some final comments, and will invite us to a celebration.
Assalamu alaikum, may peace be upon you. Thank you very much for arranging this. I was humbled when I was given the invite. I will say something very simple. Ramadan talks about having patience and perseverance. And all the leaders talked about a lot of different things. I think it's important to be patient, and it's very difficult, but it takes a lot of perseverance. That's all I'm going to say, and then I'm going to call the adhan. It's 5 more minutes, yeah. Yes. As you can tell, I'm hungry, and I'm thirsty. Yeah, I want to go now. Oh, so Ramadan, very briefly, so we fast from sunrise to sunset. which means getting up around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, having a fairly large meal, then maybe trying to go to sleep again and then going to work, feeling a little lethargic. I can deal with the not having to drink water and the food, but not having caffeine in the morning, that's what I struggle with. So I'm looking forward to having caffeine starting next week in the mornings. And then, well, not to make joke out of the situation, but it's about taking a break, right? Ramadan's about taking a break. I mean, we're eating all day, we're drinking all day, and I think this is a good cleansing opportunity as well for all of us. So come sunset, that is when all hell breaks, and then you start eating. Your body doesn't really realize, and it's difficult for the body to kind of get used to that because all day you haven't eaten for about 16 hours, and then all of a sudden you're eating a lot, and by the time your body sends a message to your brain, it's already too late, you've already had a lot.
Let me just say a few words. Let me just add to that. Since we have about 3 more minutes, let me just say something about the month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is a month in which Muslims believe the Quran was first revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, and that's really what it is. It's a commemoration of the revelation of the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam. That doesn't just address the Prophet Muhammad that Muslims believe come after Jesus, but it also affirms all of the earlier prophets and all the earlier traditions. So as you may know, Muslims actually believe in all of the prophets, beginning with Adam and Eve and ending with the Prophet Muhammad. So the Quran is filled with stories about the earlier prophets, Moses, Abraham, Jesus, and Adam and Eve, and there are about 25 that are named. Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, and so forth. So that's really what the significance of the month of Ramadan is. And during that month, Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset, as Sijan actually pointed out. But it's not just about food. More important than that is this idea of fasting from bad behavior. It's about cultivation of good character. So during the month of Ramadan, very similar to Lent, very similar to Yom Kippur and all the other fasts that you see in the other traditions, it's really about being a state of vigilance and taqwa, being really aware of your actions towards other people and towards yourself. So if you're somebody who talks about people behind their back, this is the month in which you're now conscious of your behavior and you try to stop that behavior. If you're somebody impulsive, if you're impatient, if you're a person who wastes a lot of their time, you're really focused on your behavior. That is what you're really supposed to do. So it's not just about fasting from food and water. It's really about focusing on behavior and trying to improve that behavior. Why do we do it for 30 days? Because we're trying to build habits of good behavior. And the idea is that if you do it for that long, it becomes a habit for the rest of the year. Now, do Muslims always live up to that? Not really. They don't. But we try to do that. We try to do that, and that's really the significance of the month of Ramadan. It's a period of spiritual rejuvenation, as Sijan pointed out. And we're in the last 10 days. The last 10 days is the most vigilant period of time because Muslims believe that it was during these last 10 days in which the Quran was revealed 1,400 years ago. And so they're up at night, and this is sort of the most important part of the month of Ramadan. And today is tonight. Our days, like Jewish days, begin at night, and so tonight is the 25th night of Ramadan, a very important night. So what's going to happen is sunset is going to come in, and it's about to come in 34 seconds. And so we're really conscious of the passage of time during this period of time as well. Muslims generally are because they also have to pray 5 times a day. So imagine if you're a practicing Muslim, you're really vigilant about the time and keeping of time and how you spend your time and so forth. Breaking of the fast, Sijana is going to call the adhan, the call to prayer, which means that sunset has come in. Muslims then are going to break their fast, and we have food in the back. We have samosas, and we have vegetarian samosas and chicken samosas, and we also have, I'm sorry? It's time, okay. And a typical Muslim. Do I know? We have fruit and we have water, and so You'll join us to break our fast, and then Muslims are going to cut out and go to pray sunset, and then they're probably going to take off to actually have like a full-blown dinner. So with that, we're going to go ahead and do the call to prayer. So.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. هيا على الصلاة، هيا على الصلاة، هيا على الفلاح، هيا على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.